It's my huge honor to be here to introduce Panda projects, and it is related to reputation data science and some activities and work activities ongoing inside the product labs and kin labs, and also some working activities in the whole Web3 communities. So today I will introduce the self-service computation layer of a Panda reputation data science, because today's called summit of reputation over data, computation over data, and I want to introduce the Panda from the very beginning, and introduce why we need reputation systems over Faircoin networks. I'm Taosheng, I'm from Kin Labs. I'm from China, it may be far from here. I'm not sure whether is there somebody have been there. Okay, what is Panda? Last time I asked somebody, did you heard of this name before? No? Panda, in fact, is a scientific name of the largest organism on Earth. So, on the above of the Panda tree, it appears lots of individual trees, but under the underground, everything is connected by a huge and single vast root systems. So Panda is a one-tree forest. So it's like much like macro tree forest, or it's kind of macro tree city forest. So Panda is a perfect metaphor of aggregating a huge forest of CD data around the Faircoin and then over time. So that is Panda. But actually, Panda is in the context of the Faircoin systems and the reputation systems, it is a sidechain metadata service. Why it is called sidechain? It is along with Faircoin main chain. It is kind of layer 2 data networks of Faircoin. And metadata is a service because Panda, there are huge of data on Faircoin IPFS, but Panda focuses on the metadata of these data. So that is, you can think of Panda is a kind of sidechain metadata service. That is a whole picture of the Panda nodes in the technical stack of Faircoin system ecosystems. So in the storage hierarchy point of view, Panda introduced SQL capabilities for IPFS, for IPLD data models. You can think of Faircoin is the cold storage. IPFS is warm storage. Panda is for hot storage. Panda has the IPLD database inside. We have a first layer that is IPLD data model, and the second layer is polytree indexing. It's probabilistic B-tree indexing over the IPLD data. And then the upper layer is SQL query layer for IPLD indexing and the IPLD data size. It is a high-performance database, totally new database built on IPLD native database. So Panda in layer 2 point of view is a data infra of Faircoin main chain. It could enable more layer 2 computation service over Faircoin. Okay, why we build Panda and at the very beginning, Pando gets started with repetition systems. The purpose of the repetition system is to improve the overall Faircoin network reliability by incentivize the good behavior of storage providers. You can think of this kind of network is a closed incentive loop of Faircoin networks. For example, storage providers offer storage and retrieve service, and the clients have the data necessary to make a decision about which storage providers or retrieval providers they choose to work with. That means this repetition data networks will build a feedback loop for the Faircoin network. You can leverage the repetition data to make a decision to choose which storage provider or retrieval provider to work with. That is the basic idea of the repetition systems in Web3. From a data point of view, there are a number of emerging streams of data, including testing, including demands for data and availability data and uptime data. For example, all these data are not directly hashed by Faircoin chain, and these data are not reach the consensus bar of a global main chain. So that is big data. That is the scope of Pando. So that is the basic fundamental principles behind the Pando project. From a high-level point of view, you can see Pando is here. We have the store pipeline and the retrieval pipeline, and the repetition system is kind of outbound service for this storage and retrieve. The storage clients and the retrieval clients, they can leverage the Pando and the repetition service, the repetition scores, to choose the storage provider and the retrieval provider. Okay, the properties of Pando is to keep the encrypted metadata consistently available and provide a lightweight, unbiased access to the metadata, and the most important is to discourage history revisionism. That means Pando will build an immutable data store for all the repetition data size. It is immutable, verifiable. It's like a blockchain. How Pando works? From a high-level point of view, Pando works very simple. First step is it takes this stream of the data. The second step is aggregates these data into a car archives. And then Pando will back up these archives to Faircoin. And also provide a lightweight query interface for consumers. That is the basic workflow of Pando projects. It's much simple. But inside the Pando, we build a kind of snapshot chain for all the data sets. It's for all the DEG heights of the IPLD data sets. So from data provider point of view, data is formatted as an IPLD tag, and the provider is identified label P2P peer ID, and the providers notify the session service that is Pando to publish a message over a gossip sub and advertise a new head of their tag is ready for ingestion. And Pando will implement a policy for which data it will accessible. It will access. For example, rate limit policy. And as a regular interval, the Pando will advance its IPLD DAG chain to have a new head, including provider data. It's kind of a ledger service of chain. From client's point of view, a client could fetch the data directly from the backup from Faircoin. And also a client could find the peer of a Pando entity to fetch the IPLD data directly from leverage the GraphSync protocols, for example. And the clients also can connect the HTTP endpoint of Pando and list the metadata snapshot and fetch the data size of these snapshots. Okay. So that is the overall architecture of reputation systems in Faircoin community. You can see from the left side that is data provider. There are lots of deal bots kind of bots or estuary service. They can have lots of measurements or metrics of the storage providers. And then they can put these metrics and store in Pando storage. And other reputation service, for example, FairRep and FairGram and FairManner, they can fetch these metrics and do self-service computation over this data size. For example, OLAP, cube computation over the metrics, average and sum, for example, calculation over these data metrics. And they can store back all these calculated metrics back to Pando and IPFS networks, and also Faircoin networks. And the client could get storage providers' reputation scores from Pando data stores, and then they can make a decision to choose which storage providers they can work with. That is the whole picture of the reputation systems. So currently, Pando is kind of a centralized service, but the next step, we will have decentralized solutions and implementations for Pando. Okay. Based on this reputation data, we want to build an open data lake for blocking state data and the reputation data size. Most of the reputation metrics could come from on-chain state data, and also off-chain metrics data. So we can build an open data lake over IPFS, Faircoin, and Pando together. We will build a self-service computation layer at here. Processing services. All this data is stored in Pando in IPLD format. And the most important part of computation is, for most of the big data systems, there are lots of raw data. But the most important and valuable data is processed data. So the computation service will ingest the raw data and generate processed data. That is the golden data. So other reputation service will leverage this service, computation service, and these data sets to generate the more reputation scores based on their demands. That is the whole picture from data lake point of view. What is going on with Pando currently? Currently, we have Pando MVP, and we have IPLD database inside. And we are building computation over Pando ABAX. And at the same time, we are building DID and ownership solutions for this infrastructure layer service. Because it is an open network, different entities and services could publish data to Pando, and maybe some data is fake or spam data. That is terrible. So we need DID solutions for Pando and for other service. That is current implementation. Okay. For next step, I want to introduce data mesh principles to these IPLD data infrastructures. Pando takes the role of metadata and the governance layer of the data lake. And we will build a dedicated self-service computation mesh over this Pando, IPFS, and Filecoin. We can discuss the data mesh, Web3 data mesh. This afternoon, I want to give a high-level introduction about data mesh that is domain-oriented, decentralized data ownership, and it put data as a product as a principle, and also self-service data infrastructure and federated computational governance. That is four very important principle of data mesh principle, data mesh. That is for next step we want to build. And there is many opportunities around the computation over data and with IPFS, Filecoin as the data infrastructures. We will build Web3 data infra communities in China and to incubate more this kind of startup or service over IPFS. We will have a monthly or bi-weekly workshop for this Web3 data infras and the computation over data. For example, there are many opportunities for that. That is what we have built, what we are going to do, and what we are doing. That is on my part. Thank you. Any questions?
Is your tooling open source? I mean, a lot of this is very useful, and I would love to integrate parts of this with my application, so would love to check it out. How can I start using it?
Yeah, everything with Pando projects is open source. You can check the. Okay, sorry, this website is no GitHub links. You can get the GitHub links from the website.
I guess a follow-on question. As an early stage startup, how do you monetize such complex tooling? Like what is your approach? Because that's something I'm also struggling with my own product. Like, do you offer like a premium version of services, or is it all open source? And are you going to have like a token-based sort of incentive mechanism?
Consensus mechanism? Sorry.
So how do you monetize, open source products? Like
Okay.
what would be your approach towards that?
Oh, monetize. Yeah. Basically, we have discussed much during the lab week with different peoples about the business models around in Pando. One clear method is we can have a smart contract leverage FVM, and it is a service kind of it's kind of SaaS, but you need to pay to a smart contract, and the contract will distribute the profit to different stakeholders. I think that is the basic idea we discuss much with many peoples. But currently is in a first phase of Pando. So I think there is more and more adoption for Pando is very important. So open source is very important for Pando.
Can I ask you one question also as a follow-up? A lot of the conversations that we had internally in our team and other compute over data projects may not have experience with a user base in China or much of the Asian market. We may not know what problems they have. We may not know what their attitudes are, and the regulation from the government is always changing. When compute over data projects think about serving users in the greater China or nearby markets, should we take, do you have recommendations about how to engage that community, or maybe how they think, how those communities think about the crypto space? Any perspectives on that would be very helpful.
That is a great question. I think that is why we build the IPLD database and the partner project, because regulation is a tricky topic, because somehow gray area you can do for money, for fair money. Yes, but reputation system have relationship with money, with storage providers and retrieval providers. But yes, there is some limitation in China from a storage and retrieval point of view. But we have IPLD data models. IPLD data model is common for all Web3 areas, any community, any entities. IPLD data size and the computation over IPLD, I think, is totally safe. It's no problem in China. So that is why we want to build an IPLD database to get IPLD adoption maybe in some Web2 enterprise and entities, and also for Web3 new startups. With the more and more adoption with IPLD data models, there is interoperability between and the possibilities between Web2, Web3, and other communities, even with the governments and some policies. First step, we need to get IPLD adoption. That is very important. And also for computation over data, I think that is also totally safe, because it is a big data solution, or Web3 big data solution. It's not for money. That is my personal opinion.
Well said.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no other questions, thank you so much.